Hello there, dear loving souls. Welcome back to part 2 on the video series today of attachment and longing and desperation. It's a spirit-led topic today, no particular script. In part 1 we talked about the few universal laws that have come through based on the 3 clarifiers that pop through. One is all about timing and divine timing in particular. Not rushing, but just allowing everything to occur in divine timing. Then we've got the 3 of Swords, which for me, the universal law, it's all about that mental and emotional side of things, frustration, but I guess it doesn't actually make it as expressed, but it's the universal law that comes to mind is actually to do with the physical body and specifically our heart. I mentioned a lot on this channel, the heart is a bridge between your spiritual body and your physical body. And obviously that's a big, powerful organ, and that's where love resides. And obviously what I'm getting here is also a mix between the mind, the brain, as well as the heart. The swords usually signify the head or mental abilities, intelligence, and the heart is obviously, the bridge between the spirit world and the spirit body and the physical body. So that's the universal law there. And then the Page of Cups came through, which I think is a bit more advanced, intermingling the universal laws of duality as well as your freedom of choice. Now let's think a bit more about the Holy Trinity of Love: thinking love, speaking love, and doing love. What is it that we can do, or what is it that we can think, speak, and do in order to help ourselves if we're feeling like we are attached to something, that we're desperate, we have a desperate need for that diamond, for that love, that wealth, that career aspiration, that win, that trophy, whatever it might be in your life. But in fact, you're so stuck. The fact that you have that goal or that desperation, it actually, according to this message, it's making you feel stuck. And in fact, the more you reach up to grab a diamond in the web, you get even more caught up in the process and you feel stuck. So, thinking love, I think the first one comes to mind is obviously a prayer, an act of love in my world. So pray to whomever it is that you believe in, your ascended masters, your angels, your archangels, the spirit world, your ancestors, trust in the universe perhaps, or the planet. They might be able to actually give you an insight as to where you're best, what's the next best step for you, that custom advice, in order to get yourself out of this entanglement that you find yourself in, that attachment. And speaking of which, I mentioned before, you may call on Archangel Michael with his fiery sword to help you actually detach or cut through whatever attachment it is that you've got. So be that to another human being, or be that to a particular object, or be that a particular circumstance that you have unfolded. So as an example, if for some reason there is a little bit of an attachment to overconsumption of food or alcohol, just as an example, or social media, or too much watching videos on YouTube, so it's obviously not an attachment to a human, it's an attachment to an activity or an object or product. And you have become aware that actually that's an unhealthy attachment anymore. It's not causing you joy, it's not causing you to feel more well, it's actually taking away from your joy and your happiness. Then do not hesitate to call on Michael, Archangel Michael, and ask him nicely and politely to request to use his fiery sword to break through that attachment between yourself and that thing. That might be one way to go in terms of thinking love. Now, the other one that's definitely coming through with this Knight of Swords and the 3 of Swords that pops up is that sometimes mental overstimulation or overthinking can cause more havoc in our life, more conflict, more chaos, as opposed to good. So one of the ways we can mentally try and control things is through time, right? The factor that you have to get something done quickly. Here's my to-do list, strategy, plan, to-do list, execution, etc. Now, if your time, because time came through quite strongly with this Knight of Swords, there's one where you're trying to control something and it's causing you stress and anxiety, and as if you are underperforming, as if you're not on plan or on schedule. perhaps it's time to revisit the timing factor of what it is that you're doing, or the project you're trying to complete, or the goal that you're trying to meet. Because if divine timing is what matters most, and things will happen in divine timing. Likewise, the other one with the Three of Swords, like I mentioned before, sometimes from a mental perspective, we think too much, we can get our emotional resilience can decrease, unfortunately. So it might actually, the mind, the brain could have an impact on our emotions and our feelings, and as a result cause more stress and anxiety, which is not a situation we really want to be into. So a strong message coming through is be mindful of overthinking. Perhaps in order to actually think like, what can you do, what can you think to do you good? And prayer might be a way to help you out. Another way is to become aware of the fact that you have become attached or you're desperate for something. That's a thinking love in my world, because if you can become aware of the fact that you've got an attachment and it's not a healthy one, then you've taken that initial step to be able to become aware of the situation you're in. Then you can come up with the ideal, right? What's the ideal picture? What's the ideal consequence? And once you know the now and the ideal, then you might figure out the plan forward in terms of what steps you ought to take in order to help you through the situation that you find yourself in, and in order to effectively release the attachment, to detach the desperation and the longing. And perhaps there's something in this advice as well, which is exercising your freedom of choice, and thinking love, practicing more love towards yourself, showing yourself compassion for the situation you have found yourself in, not trying to shame yourself or blame yourself for having had or having that diamond, whatever that is the representation in your life, whatever that aspiration actually is. So not shaming or blaming yourself, but exercising your freedom of choice to get yourself on the right path, in order to actually forget about the diamond in the web and just use the sword wisely in order to actually, cut that web altogether that you find yourself in, and walk out scot-free in the most possible manner for yourself and for your highest good. Now, I might grab just a couple of messages from this book here, because I feel like I might have to read some messages here from this book, from the Little Book of Tarot. So as I'm opening up the pages, I'll go to Swords. The other part of the Holy Trinity of Love is, of course, speaking love and doing love. And when we talk about speaking, the prayer that I mentioned earlier on about thinking love, obviously you can speak it out loud, you can address your loved ones, you can address your ancestors, your angels, your spirit guides. It's always available to you to actually verbalize it, put those things in words. But the other thing that comes strongly is it's sometimes quite a helpful healing exercise to speak your inner truth, inner feelings. If you are feeling desperate for love, money, success, or whatever else, if you find yourself like you are trapped in the web, perhaps it's time to actually speak to somebody about that. And it might be a matter of finding a loved one, or with somebody you can be vulnerable, or an independent person, some professionals out there who provide the service of, listening and hearing you out and talking you through the issues that you're facing. Certainly, if you're feeling very, very low frequency vibes, like the Three of Swords is depicting, and be mindful of the fact that you might be in a vulnerable and dangerous zone. Like here, the card brings a warning for a reason, that it perhaps is time to become aware of the attachment, become aware of that desperation. It is probably causing you health issues, be that on a physical level, mental, emotional, or spiritual, and it's time to exercise some freedom of choice in order to help yourself, in order to heal yourself. So speaking love, part of it is speaking to somebody about whatever it is that you're going through. Might be very important in your life. Let's read what this Three of Swords about. Now I'm mindful that also there's this doing love part of the Holy Trinity of Love. Let's see if any of these messages from the book might actually help us with that as well. What can we do in order to help ourselves through the situation in life where there's a bit of attachment? So here we go, Three of Swords. The key words are breakup, divorce, disappointment, mental health issues, depression, PTSD, suicidal thoughts, and healing psychology. This is known as the heartbreak card. It suggests you will not get what you want, or you might get something, but it won't be in the form that you would prefer. Your plans and hopes will end in disappointment. It may represent mental health issues, in which case you must seek specialist help. And I think this 100% just confirms exactly what I've just said, right? So if you find yourself in, rock bottom, where you feel like very, very low, it's time perhaps to reach out to some psychologists out there, some professional help, in order to seek the guidance of specialists who might be able to help you out of this spider web that you find yourself in as a result of attachments and feelings of desperation. The other one that I'm drawn from this point is that it suggests you will not get what you want, or you might get something, but it won't be in the form that you would prefer. So exactly right. Perhaps the desperation that whatever it is that you're after in your life isn't actually what your soul desires. It's not what you have chosen to experience before you've been incarnated into this life. It's a freedom of choice that we get in this human life, right? In this experience. You might be after a particular material thing, be that, a particular car, or a mansion for a home, or ability to travel the whole world, whatever it might be, right? But there may be a disconnection with some of the milestones or lessons that you have chosen for yourself before you even came to this lifetime, before you incarnated, and hence this card is trying to tell you, what you're after isn't in the form that you kind of need it, or you would prefer, or you might not get it at all, because it's just kind of not on the cards for you. And so that's something that could obviously be an important message for some of you. And your plans and hopes will end in disappointment, exactly for that reason. Perhaps it's not something, that diamond isn't something that will actually make your life feeling fulfilled. Now let's have a look at Knight of Swords. Knight of Swords. Here we go. The key words are critical, intelligent, rush, brisk, righteousness, social activism, and conflict. As a person, this knight can be someone who has a sharp mind, but who tends to come to instant conclusions. A brisk personality, he immediately attacks any perceived insult. In a reading, it foretells a need to protect ourselves or our rights, even if this means fighting for them. That's amazing, and I do think, it takes it away from what the message I was getting, which is more about time. And it does here, obviously, suggest briskness and being fast or coming to instant conclusions. But more importantly, I like this, it foretells the need to protect ourselves or our rights, even if this means fighting for them. Some of you might need to hear that, because you, in alignment with Three of Swords, you may no longer be protecting yourself by trying to be desperate for something or longing for something that you think is best for you. You might not actually be inherently protecting yourself or your rights as you're trying to achieve that thing. So this is just a reminder that it's time perhaps to review your life and a particular attachment or attachments that you may have, and it's time to exercise your free choice in order to protect yourself from harm, or even further harm that could potentially result as a result of this attachment that is present. Yeah, and fight for yourself. So yeah, the doing love, maybe it's time to fight for yourself, fight for your own well-being, fight for your own protection of your heart, protection of your spirit, protection of your love, protection of your general well-being. And whatever it is, obviously, that is being longed for, this attachment is unhealthy. That's what I'm getting, the messages I'm getting is simply unhealthy. So it's time to protect yourself, to protect your spirit, to protect your heart, to protect and fight for your heart, fight for your spirit, fight for your soul journey, fight for whatever it is that you truly actually are. And doing love, well, maybe perhaps this whole channel is all about practicing love, right? So it's about making sure that you can use, you can exercise your freedom of choice in any particular situation to actually practice love. And that's thinking love, speaking love, and doing love. And as a principle, this is, going back to that Page of Cups, duality of things, as well as your freedom of choice to do whatever it is that you wish, quite frankly. Maybe it's time to fight for yourself, to go and protect what you are inherently, which is you are a lovely, a dear, loving soul. We're all spirits having a human experience, so it's time to protect yourself. It's time to fight for yourself and your eternal, your true, your core self, what you're made of, as opposed to seeking out some kind of external measure of success or external measure of happiness and joy, external, shiny thing, the diamond or whatever it is that you may have an attachment to. Of course, it could be a person, another individual. Alright, and I'm just mindful of the time. I'm gonna get through to the Page of Cups just to see if there's any other final messages in terms of the practical tips. What is it that we can do to help ourselves in a situation of longing and desperation? And the Page of Cups tells us the following key words: studious, child, youth, open-minded, supportive, and clear intentions. So as a person, this card relates to a child or someone who is hungry for knowledge. They're nice, kind, supportive, and open-minded people whom you can trust with your feelings. In a reading, it's a good omen for a budding friendship or romance, and I like that. That's why I think it felt for me kind of like advice that, there's the freedom of choice. And there's duality to things. You can choose to continue to be attached to that diamond, as an example, or you can choose not to be attached to that diamond anymore in order to fight for yourself, to protect your heart, to protect what you are really inherently. And it's finding that who you truly are, which is being nice, kind, supportive, and open-minded person to your own self. Somebody, but likewise from a speaking love, maybe that's another example of what you could do, is to try and find a person in your life who that might resonate for you as a Page of Cups, as an individual that demonstrates qualities of being nice, kind, supportive, and open-minded. They might be a younger person, somebody who is in their youth, yet they are still able to show those qualities that I've just read out loud. And you might feel like they're your really good friend, and as a result of that, somebody that you can be vulnerable with, somebody you can trust with your feelings and your emotions. And so, the doing is figuring out who that person is, I suspect, and actually contacting them, obviously getting in touch with them in order to speak love, in order to speak what is going on in your life. So with that in mind, I'm going to wrap up part 2. As I mentioned, this is going to be a very deep and sensitive topic, and look, I am just just very, very deep. I can sort of feel the density of this message, but I'm mindful that it's obviously something that the Spirit wants me to talk about, and hence the way the cups have fallen out. But what I will do now is there'll be more messages from the Spirit from part 3, so click on the link down below, my dear loving souls, and let's get into part 3 together. See you shortly.